Hi, welcome to the new episode of Sportsy Let's Talk Sports. Today we have with us a super girl. She's an experienced media manager and a sports floor manager, 6+ years of varied sporting event experience in Indian subcontinent as well as South Asia. A strong professional skill in media management, sports PR, floor managing, teams, stadium hospitality, sports management, and sports marketing. Yes, she is a super girl. Today we have with us Juhi Phillip, who is currently working on Pakistan Super League. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and thank you for sharing. But please do subscribe on our channel Sportsy Says and help us spread the word about Sportsy. We go with the same handle Sportsy Says across all the social media platforms. Hey, hi Juhi. It's so great to have you on our platform Sportsy Let's Aim Sports, which is aspire, inspire, and motivate. So I'm sure what we get, people are going to listen to all full of aspiration, inspiration, and motivation from a young, cheerful a woman in sport who is experienced. Well, how do I say it? She's an experienced media manager, event manager, sports floor manager, 6-7 years of sporting events. I probably, if you count, maybe 50, 60 different events that she has done, if not more.
Yes.
And with media, sports, PR, phenomenal background. And currently, she's handling the whole brand activation, brand management for Pakistan Super Leagues, and she's live with us from Karachi. So
I said,
great
I
to have you.
mean, it's amazing to be out here in Karachi and be talking to you as well. Well, it's a long journey that I've made to come down to Pakistan, first of all. It is quite incredible to be here. This is my first time here. And I've had so many questions about how do you come to Pakistan and, stuff like that. How do you get a visa and how did you even get here? But that's a long journey that I think I'm very excited to talk to you about today.
Yes. So before we understand how do you get to Pakistan to enjoy the sports, we want to know how did you get into sport?
So I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and my father's an engineer, and I spent most of my life in the Middle East. And while I was there, Saudi Arabia, as known to people now, is not how it was back in the day. We didn't even have television for that matter. We only had a couple of channels. But my father was someone who loved sports. He used to work with Tatas, and he's played football for Tatas. He's played hockey for Tatas. So I'm the firstborn, and I was always the adventurous one. So he made sure, despite of no opportunities to go out, he used to get me to play a lot of sport. Mm-hmm. And whether it was the corridor or whatever. And I had a lot of brothers and family friends. So I always grew up around boys. So for me, sport was like the only outing that we had. And what happened to be was football was my go-to sport because my father used to bring in a lot of pre-recorded matches and make me watch them and try and understand the game. And I think when I came back to India, that was one sport which I didn't see was touched. I came back to India to Delhi. And football, unfortunately, wasn't really a sport that girls played in school. Yeah. I came back, there was volleyball, basketball, badminton, sometimes swimming, but football was something that people stayed away from. I somehow, stopped playing the sport. And then I got into law school because half my family are lawyers, and they're like, you talk a lot, you have a lot of panache when it comes to speaking to people, you should become a lawyer. So yeah, that was just the Indian thing to do.
Yeah.
I get into law. Well, towards the end, the Indian Super League started in 2014.
Yeah.
And I was head over heels. I was like, finally, and I was based out of Delhi then. So Delhi Dynamos came into place. Del Piero was there. I mean, he was my childhood legend anyway. Del Piero was there. I attended every single home game. I just did. And then I figured I knew a couple of people socially who were working for Delhi Dynamos. Started to follow all their social media pages. I had no inkling as to what happens in sport. And to be honest, now kids are very lucky where there are so many sports management courses that have come into India. But go back to 2014, we had none. We had a couple of those courses. I think ISSM was doing a course which wasn't really a postgraduate course, but just a certificate. And that too, we
diploma.
Correct.
More PG diploma, yeah.
Correct. And again, it didn't give you an understanding as to what do people do. When we sit back home and watch a sport on the TV, we don't know what goes around at the back. There's so many departments, it's so much happening. So when I went to the home game, I used to not only notice the football, but I used to look at all these people around, all the cameras and everything. And I think that was like one of my first live games that I'd seen. Back in the day, I'd attended one of the I League games. It wasn't called I League then. So it was a
Hmm.
Mahindra United game that I'd attended as a kid. And so I was always fascinated with Indian football. And a very close friend of mine, Robin Singh, was also playing in the Indian team.
Yeah.
And that was my brush with the Indian team, right? So cut to 2015, just prior to the second season. I was interning just around the block from where the Den offices were, the Dynamos offices were,
Okla.
and Okla, correct.
Yeah.
So I just, at a whim, right? So it was there on the Facebook page. They're looking for interns, and I was already making decent amount of money, but I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go and give a shot at this. So I just called up the office. They said, can you come at so and so hour? So I get there and I met Brigadier Dhillon, who used to be the
Yeah.
CEO at that time. And he's like, Beta, aapne wakalat padhi hai. Why do you want to, get into sport? And I mean, we don't even have anything matching your profile. Because at that time, and even now for that matter, in sport in India, you don't really, it is developing, but sports law is still far away.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was Den Networks managing them, and they had their own lawyers and everything. So there was no space for me to get in there. So I was like, so I'll do anything. It's a football team. I'm a football fan. I know the game, and I want to learn. And he said, but you spent so much time studying. I was like, for some odd reason, I love learning law, but I've not enjoyed a single day. And I'm a person who wants to enjoy every bit of work that I do. And I think that's the only way I'll flourish in life. So he'll heard all of the blabber, and I'm just all excited. I'm a child there. I'm 23, and he's like the CEO or the president, sorry, of the company is
Yeah.
around. He's come down from Sweden. Prashant was around. It's like, why don't you just go and pop in? So he said he's from Sweden, right? So I didn't know it's going to be an Indian descent Swedish person at that time. So I go in, and he's like, why do you want to do this? And I was like, there's nothing that's inspired me more than football while living in a country like Saudi Arabia. It used to literally, it's made me cry, it's made me laugh. It's really been responsible for a lot of my mood swings. Like my mom used to know not to knock on my door when the Euro Cup was happening. So it was pretty much like that. So my exams were on hold, everything. So football has just been religion to me personally. But that didn't limit me from other sports. I loved swimming, and I used to play a lot. I used to run a lot earlier until I had a few injuries on my leg. But I've always been into sport, but football was particularly religion to me. And that's when I started working in football. And that's how sport happened to me, because Prashant was gracious enough. And he again decided to not give me just one department. He's like, so we have media happening, we have hospitality, we have XYZ. I was like, I don't know anything. I will do everything just to learn. And that's what I did. And there wasn't a single day that I said, I'm uncomfortable. But I think over time, he realized that I had a natural flair for media and for writing and PR skills. So he sort of started to push me towards there. And back then at the Delhi Dynamos, we had an incredible team, which was a family.
Yeah.
And that stayed. And that's really brought me where I am today.
Wow. It's a journey, and I think you made it happen, right place, right time, and grabbing the opportunity with both the hands. I think that is what it's
Right.
all about, right? Is the typical thing that we have for the theme, right? Aspire, inspire, and motivate. So you aspired to be where you wanted to be. You and the whole inspiration was, yeah, and keep motivating yourself. So I think it's so good to do that. And some of the things that you probably just said on the way were so good for people to understand. If you want to make a career out of it, don't get fixated about one particular role, one particular salary, one particular thing. Try to get your hands dirty, understand, learn. You can't play a game unless you're on the field.
Correct.
So
Absolutely not.
I always say that is like the best part of sports is an opportunity to play a game. So
Correct.
I think that is something which has happened, and you also said that sports was a way of outing. But now, what does sports means to you? It was while growing up, yes, it was a event and outing. But now, what is sports for you?
So when I started working at Dynamos, I took it a day at a time, of course, because I was still new to everything. Luckily, it wasn't just the backroom staff, but even the playing staff and the coaching staff that came in. We had Gianluca Zamrota in season 3. And I remember when he came in, so each day felt, we used to spend about 18 hours at office. No one day did any one of us complain. Out of the 18 hours, we did have about 3 to 4 hours of just faffing around because there wasn't much work happening. But what you need to understand when you come into sport is you're dedicating your life to it. And that's why you need to love it to work in it. I mean, you can have all the degrees and all the experience, but unless you don't love it, it's not going to be an easy. And I think the love of sport that developed over the years in my childhood helped me.
Mhm.
But now I think it's a part of my life. And I did meet my husband at work as well. And I think that's been easy as well, because we met at the 2016 T20 World Cup. And I think a mutual respect towards our work and just the work ethic that we both get as people who've played sports. So he used to
Mhm.
play football. He's played football for Dempo
Oh,
back
nice.
in the day. So I think sport has become like just a lifeline to us
Mhm.
practically. There's till date, I'd say I don't say no to any work. And it's been 6 years, and in 6+ years actually, I've done anything and everything that's come my way. And my one agenda of how I choose work is always been whoever's offered me something that's worthwhile. Obviously, a trustworthy
Yeah.
company, you have to do a little R&D,
Yeah.
which is good. But whoever offers it to me first, I say yes to them. It's practically that, and then I don't go back on my word. And so I stuck around at a permanent job with Dynamos for 2 years and then transitioned into being a freelancer. That's been quite the hustle, but at the same time, I've got to do so much more. And like I said, and like you said as well, it's always to aspire to know more.
Yeah.
And that's helped me a lot. So now it's all become about what next. I've had this question asking people asking me, what do you want to be? You do
Yeah.
XYZ and you're doing all of that. And I'm like, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly what I want to be, right? People have studied a lot. And I don't want to take back from the fact that you shouldn't study, because I have my own plans of wanting to do a master's, but then you have to find the right time.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of colleagues who've done their masters right after Dynamos and then in different places of life. But right now, it also becomes important as to what I have in hand is
Yeah.
giving me more experience than what stop doing my work for about a year, because
Right.
sport really does take all of your time. There are no
Yeah.
festivals, there are no weekends, there's
Correct.
nothing. There are no sleeping nights. I mean, you actually can sleep in the morning.
Yeah.
Mornings is when nothing happens in sport.
So,
But
yes.
so that's one thing. So I do have plans to study more, but what you learn on the ground, and you aspire to learn from everything and anything. I mean, you don't only learn from your seniors, right? That's one thing I've noticed. You also learn from the player. You
Yeah.
also learn from someone like a ground staff. Uh, I work in cricket a lot more than I work in football currently, which wasn't my favorite sport back in
Mhm.
the day. But it's also cricket's more predominant in the subcontinent. And it was a choice that I had to make because I was getting a lot of work in cricket. And while it felt aspirational to stick to football, but it was also more important to transition and learn more.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the basic formula of how the operations or the broadcasting works in sport is general. It's a Bible, and then it just flourishes around it.
Yeah.
So it was important for me to branch out. And I think the groundsmen have been my best friend because they've taught me so much about the game that I didn't know about. So yeah, then you just learn. So sport right now for me, I think, is just evolving more as a human being. It contributes a lot to who I am still,
Yeah.
and I hope it continues to.
Yeah. As people say, right? The sports is the biggest teacher, and the field is the biggest classroom that you can get. So I think you said it all
Correct.
with your experience as well as your what you want to do. So, but Juhi, one thing that we have read through your profile, right? Your work across anchoring, exciting, glamorous side of it, events, production, social media, across AFC, ISL, ICC, IPL, now Pakistan Super League, Abu Dhabi T20. I think the list goes on along with the IMGs and Delhi
Yeah.
Dynamos and everything. what has been your favorite place, profile, and the location?
Tricky. Can I just name different ones for each?
All yours.
Okay.
Let's see. You are the host. So you are the guest here. I'm the host. So whatever you say, I'm going to go with it.
Well, when it comes to profile, in recent times, I've started to love my marketing and sponsorship side of role, which is not really bringing the sponsors on board. I actually work in sponsor activations and implementing it on ground.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Um,
one.
yeah, because what I've figured over the years is if the sponsors and broadcast doesn't exist, there's not going to be any sport. There's
Yes.
not going to be any money. So just to be able to plug in that and effectively bring that out, I think that's become my favorite part of working in. And that's something I'm getting more inclined to and sort of basing my jobs out of. Uh, but as for favorite place, it would always be Delhi Dynamos. Any day,
Okay.
any day. It was early days. It was a lot more work. I don't know how did I survive that. I don't know any one of us who ever worked there survived that because we used to be there all the time. I mean, it was family. Every part of Delhi Dynamos, we were part of every person who was there, their families as well, right? So what we learned there and the atmosphere that Prashant Agarwal created there is something that's sort of gotten embedded in my own system. Even today, when I go out there and work, there were basic things he used to teach us there, right? So that will remain a very special place in my heart. Even today, if it was AFC a couple of years ago when I started working with them, when I did the FIFA job in 2017, or whether it was currently, I'm also looking forward to working with Epsom Square, which
Hmm.
is taken over from Lagardère for all the AFC
Yeah.
commercial rights. So that's something I'm working with as well once AFC competitions are back on the road. So that's another thing. So when that happened, every time any big thing happens at work, the first message is to Prashant and the whole lot, Remus and everyone who've been responsible. Remus was kind enough actually to bring me. As for the hosting part, I think a lot of people out there would think that would be my favorite, the glamour and etc. that goes around with it. But I think hosting is one of the most difficult things I've ever done,
Yes.
ever.
I can imagine that.
It might look simple. There'll be people who'll tell you, you're a photogenic face, you can do this, you know the sport. Honestly, it is the toughest job I've done. I'll rather stay away from the camera. I do enjoy it, I wouldn't lie, but I do enjoy working at the back end of the sport more, where
Hmm.
I can give back and create a community that the sport keeps growing, whichever sport I'm working for that matter. I'm not saying that anchoring doesn't do that, but that it's not the same end to the means that I would like to create. So it is fun while it keeps coming my way. I enjoy it. I recently concluded something with Manchester United U18s,
Yes.
courtesy Remus. That was one of the most incredible sessions I've ever had. And there was great feedback from United as well. And for a millisecond, I was thinking maybe I should just go back to anchoring. But it is quite rewarding, to be honest, because it's immediate rewards when you anchor.
Yeah.
People acknowledge your presence in the day and age of social media. It's immediate rewards, unlike working at the back end where people wouldn't even know you exist.
Correct.
uh, so it's working for gratification as well as gratitude. So for me, gratitude takes precedence for that matter.
Nice. So just to take a leaf from what you just mentioned is with all this thing, what has been your best moment which made you feel so glad to be part of this industry?
I think there are a lot of moments like that, but I pick a recent one.
Mhm.
There was something called the Lanka Premier League that just got concluded.
Right.
And like I said before, I wasn't a cricket fan, but over the last few years, I've been a part of the broadcast team that was touring Sri Lanka for the last 3 years. So over the 3 years, I got to know the senior players, the junior players, the younger boys, everyone, people who haven't played, who used to just come to the nets to help the batsmen.
Hmm.
And it became like people used to make fun that, you should just take a citizenship in Sri Lanka, you're just there all the time. And this time when LPL happened, it was a different production team. And, I was thinking if I want to be a part of it or not. But the only
IPG group, right?
reason,
It was IPG.
correct,
Yeah.
correct, IPG did that. And my only note to them why I wanted to do it desperately was because I'd been going there for 3 years. And this is finally, we've seen what the IPL has done for the Indian cricketers. We've seen what the Big Bash is doing for the Australian cricketers. We've seen what PSL is doing for the Pakistani cricketers as well. So it was high time Sri Lanka saw its due as well. And when I got there, unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, a lot of players, senior players, international names had to pull out.
Yeah.
And that's when the younger boys got a chance. And I was all guns blazing. I was like, I literally used to sit with them. I was like, you have to give me an English interview. You have to make sure the world knows you. And to be honest, a couple of them ended up at the Abu Dhabi T10, which just followed right after.
Mm-hmm.
And that was surprising. And they had stunning performances. There was someone called Mahesh Dikshana and Dhananjaya Lakshan. These two had, no one knew them in Sri Lanka, let alone the world. And the next thing you know, they're playing in the Abu Dhabi T10. And then the winning side, they won the Abu Dhabi T10 as well. And so that, I think recently that every time I see my work's given me gratitude in terms of getting any grassroots level of touch, just becoming a part of their lives and helping them be this person. Like I said before, players know the sport.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we forget that they also have to be taught how to interact with the media or basic things, which we just think they learn over time, And a lot of times players, especially the subcontinent in cricket, are treated as commodities.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes all they want to do is just have a general chat with you, So I think that brought me a lot of gratitude that Lanka Premier League happened. And fortunately, in my head, the senior players couldn't make it. From all the international players, that is, they couldn't make it, most of them. So the younger boys got a chance. And when the younger boys got a chance, they got a chance to play further in all these leagues. They've gotten recognized. And that's the mission. That's the mission all across the board. Apart from that, I think it'll be the AFC social media job that I got.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Apart from that, AFC, of course. AFC was quite the highlight in my career. I'd already been working with them as a freelance commercial manager. But it was in Thailand in 2019 that they were looking for a switch. They had another colleague of mine who was working with them, who was shifting with them permanently that time. So they said, this position's going to open. You guys know everyone. Why don't you do this? And I was like, hey, sure. Because like I said, I haven't really ever studied sports management or media management or social media. And kids nowadays know, like they literally have courses for this, right?
Yeah.
So I was freaking out, to be honest. And it's like, no, you'll handle it. I was like, okay, why not? So it was supposed to start January 2020, but I sort of started to do a lot more work in about November 2019. And I think the highlight was meeting, or rather meeting this girl called Karishma Ali. Mm-hmm. She's a Pakistani footballer. She's from this place called, Chitral. It's up north.
Okay.
And it's stunningly beautiful. The reason I say it was the highlight is because, we read, not only in India, but across the world, you read reports about Pakistan in a certain light, especially when it comes to the women. And I was blown away as to this one girl, Ami. She's all of 21, if I'm not mistaken. And she is also an ambassador at the UNESCO for handicraft from that region.
Okay.
And she has a football team for the young girls there. She started a grassroots program at 21. And similar interactions with a lot more people. So I think that was really the highlight to join AFC, is that currently I'm also hoping to be a part of another very exciting project on similar lines. But yeah, Karishma Ali was quite the highlight in terms of getting to know a new part of the world, realizing that sport is not limited to the big cities. You realize that in India very soon. Most of our players come from smaller cities. But then you read about regions like Afghanistan, Pakistan, some parts of Sri Lanka as well. Even in the southeast of Asia, there are parts in Vietnam where you wouldn't think that the players would be coming from there, but they are. And it's very important that I had the chance to highlight their performance. Mm-hmm. I had the chance for the world to let them see that there is football in Chitral, with the most stunning mountains that we see, like in Ladakh, similar
Yeah.
picturesque areas with the most, so with the freedom of playing football. And I think it's been very enriching the last 1 year that I've been with AFC to
Mhm.
explore content and get to know people. But yeah,
Right.
Karishma Ali, I think till date's been my favorite, because I didn't know something like that could exist, and I was glad that I could show it to the world as well.
Nice. So, okay, so since we are on the women in sports and something that inspired you and you look up to, that world over, we're talking about equality and everybody's talking about that, right? So, how has been your experience as a, I call it a, I call you superwoman with the whole profile that I'm reading about you, right? So, like a superwoman in sport, like you.
Surprisingly, I think I had a very good induction to sport. When I entered Dynamos, at the same time, there were a couple of schools in I think it was Delhi University that were doing these side courses for sports management called Sella Sport, I think, or something like that. And we got a couple of interns from there as well. While I was an intern, I was supposedly the head of interns. That was a very funny thing that happened, but we'll get, Prashant had his ways. So he said, you're going to speak to these girls and everything. So we were about 4 girls already in Delhi Dynamos, and it was a very good balanced ratio. I think I've been very lucky
Hmm.
to find equality in every place that I've been, in terms of payments as well as work profile. But what I do see that lacks till date, there's no lack of women in sport, to be
Correct.
honest, on behind the scenes. I mean, except broadcasting. I think broadcasting is something that women are still getting into. There are very few of us. Every now and then, in my current crew, we are 3 women, excluding the commentators, which
Hmm.
is the highest number I've ever worked with in broadcasting.
Well,
But then again, broadcasting is a niche that women are still trying to figure. It involves cameramen and everything, and there are only a couple of camera women in India.
mhm.
There are loads in Australia and South Africa, but there are only a couple in India. So it's still a niche that people are figuring. So that's one space I don't see too many women. But otherwise, I think in marketing or in sport in general, if I may, I think women are more organized in a lot of ways.
Yeah, 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 no doubt
So,
about it.
so I've seen from my own experience that how women are given a lot of these organizational roles a lot of times. So I think in terms of, there's no disparity when it comes to hiring women at all,
Right.
especially in a country like ours at the moment. I have had a couple of times, I've met a few people, I wouldn't name them, where,
Hmm.
they've come up and said, but you're married, you think you'll be able to do this, it's long hours and all that. I've had an offer back in the day, something that was a massive thing. I had to move to Orissa for that. This is not football related, just to make it clear. But they said, they spoke to me, and then someone on the other end, again, HR. These are not people from sports. So hence I didn't take as much offense, but it did disturb me to a level where, like, no, you're married. I think you should let it be. And I was like, you haven't even asked me, right? So I think those things still happen, but it's not as bad.
Yeah,
I think when I look back to being a lawyer, there are a lot of women in law as well,
correct.
but there's a lot more disparity there. There's a
Mhm.
lot more condescending sentiment there as opposed to sport.
Yeah,
But what we really need when it comes to equality in sport is giving an equal opportunity to the women who are playing. So behind the scenes, we exist. We
yeah,
exist in big numbers. And while I keep talking about gratitude, about, Lanka Premier League, XYZ, so how I felt in Karishma's case was next level because it was a woman,
yeah.
right? And she had an opportunity and she made the full of it. And she's doing wonders here in Pakistan when it comes to football. She's a brand ambassador of Pepsi here as well. So at her age
Wow.
to achieve that, that's massive. So things like that, right? So in India as well, there's Aditi uh, Chauhan, who is the goalkeeper. She's played for West Ham,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yes, we have the same
And
United. Yeah.
correct. So she's back in India. She's running her own academy as well. She kicks.
She kicks.
And so things like that, it is happening. But to be honest, the IWL, which is due to
Yeah,
start in Orissa, I just read about it
yeah.
yesterday. It's again really short, and this is just football related. Even in cricket, IPL has been happening for ages now.
Yeah.
But then they did this IPL for women, which was just a few days long. I
Yeah.
mean, our Indian women's team is doing so well. Why would you not give them a longer league?
Yeah.
Especially in something that's already established like IPL. So if I have any angst or if I have any opinions about disparity in sport when it comes to women, it's
Mhm.
more about the actual sports women and not people behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, we're working in numbers.
Yeah.
And I was a part of the AFC U19 Women's Championship in Thailand.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized how a tournament, I mean, we were, I think, 85% of us running the tournament for women. And it was
Mhm.
a women's tournament. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
It And these women were at least 10 to 15 years elder to me. I was the youngest somehow. I always end up to be one of the youngest people around. And I enjoy it, but I don't think it's going to last too long. I'm growing older now. But, and I was just astonished as to, but none of them were really from our region. They
Mhm.
were Australians, Japanese, and mostly people from Malaysia and stuff, right? So
Right.
it takes a lot for women like us to be a part of this, but it takes a lot for sports, like for us to develop a space for women to continue to be sports women, right?
Yes.
Like
Correct.
if Aditi Chauhan wants to be a footballer, and goalkeepers have a life longer than the strikers,
Correct.
the defenders,
Correct.
right? So if she wants to play football for the next 10 years, she should be able to. But we know current in the current scenario, it could be tough,
Yeah.
right? Because there are a lot more women coming in, but there's not enough space to play.
Correct.
There are not enough leagues to play. They're not playing regularly enough. So if you and every time I go to an AFC competition, women's competition, I haven't seen our women's team, and that hurts. Uh, and that's the only word to describe it. That hurts. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not making an effort. I know every year the associations have been, AIFF has been trying to do a lot more work. At the IPL level, BCCI is trying to do a lot of work. But I think it's high time that at least people related with the IPL, they're making enough money to
Mhm.
invest more, and try and make a bigger, longish women's league, because our women do need to play.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
if women are asking for equality, if players are asking for equality, I've heard some horrendous stuff from a lot of people, around me about how do women ask for equality in sport when they're not even bringing enough finances. It always comes down to the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Like who's watching the women's game? Well, you're not doing it enough.
Yeah.
My question is, you're not doing it enough. Who was watching the ISL in season one? People who watched the ISL in season one went for Del Piero like me.
Yeah.
So, or or Anelka, right? We didn't know the others. I mean, fortunately, I didn't know Renedy and the other guys, but the other guys who were around, who came to the game, did not know. So let's establish that. Let's get, even if you have to get Lisa Staliker to come back and play, let's do that.
Let's do
You
that.
know,
Yeah. Exactly.
but but let's establish that for them, and we really need to do that. And the unfortunate part is when we talk about men's sport as well, when I say ISL, Del Piero came around, right? Now when you talk about women's sport, and I'm a Manchester United fan, and to be honest, I can't name the playing 11 for the United women's team, so I'm ashamed of that as well. But then
Right.
again, that's also because I don't have access to watch the games.
Yeah.
If I had access, I'd be watching the games, I'd know my players. So it takes effort as well. So why do we need to make an effort to watch that game?
Yeah.
And this is, I'm talking about the UK, I'm not even talking about India, right?
Yeah.
So I think with India getting in so many leagues and putting in so much time and effort into sport, I think why can't we just lead the way forward instead of waiting for a UK or the US to pave the way forward for us and do something more for our women in sport, for sure.
Yeah, I think very well said. And funnily, you spoke about the Manchester United women's team. You go and ask the football fanatics in India about all the 11 playing male footballers in the team.
Yeah,
They can probably name five.
yeah,
That is the unfortunate state that they say we are fanatic footballers and football is our passion, and name more than five people they still can't know. They can't
yeah,
name the five more than five people. But yeah, they probably you can go and name even the reserves of Manchester United and Liverpool, but not the
correct.
Indian own team. But that's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
that's a
correct. I've met people they say we are big fans of Indian football. We love playing Baichung Bhutia play. And
so
I'm just looking at their face and I'm like, that
yeah.
was ages ago. I mean, Baichung was hot, but that was ages ago, man. Anyway,
Yeah.
oh no, but there's a guy who looks like Baichung Bhutia. I was like, you mean Sunil Chhetri?
Uh,
That man has goals almost equivalent to Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. But all right, I'll let you be with your ignorance.
Yeah. No,
But
but
yeah,
that's the
I get your
unfortunate
point.
state. That's the unfortunate
Yeah,
state that we are in. So while you're talking about the equality for women in sports at the global level, I think we need to look at the equality of sports beyond cricket in India as well.
correct.
But I'm of the opinion that cricket has done well for themselves. Other sports do not have to compare themselves with cricket, but at least lead the way with the federation and make it happen.
Yeah,
I think that is more
yeah,
important. That is what we have to look at. We see kabaddi, phenomenal growth, right?
yeah.
The way it grew. Uh, so anyway, I think I do know the kind of answer that you have for my next question because you already kind of spelt it. But what is one thing that you would like to change about the Indian sports? Given away, you have a
Um,
magic wand, abracadabra. What is that you will do?
I think to begin with, which is something that I've only learned because for the past few years, I haven't worked in India at all. I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate sometimes. I feel unfortunate because I don't get to see a lot of my friends and people that I know in the industry, including my husband. He's been away in a bubble for the last 4 months. But uh, I think one thing that we need to change is just organizing things a little better.
Mhm.
Um, we can take leaves from, we have people who have come from the FIFA masters and everything, and they try to organize.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to, keep going down the ladder and it just keeps disappearing. Uh, just basic things. I think we just really need to have a proper organized chart. We don't, it's great that we create so much employment, but sometimes I just see that way too many people doing the same kind of stuff.
Mhm.
We're not needed there, creating more confusion, creating a broth we don't want to have. Um, so it's pretty much just it comes down to organization, really, nothing else. I think in India we are a little too cluttered.
Yeah.
There are better ways to do things, and we are known for jugaad, right?
Yeah.
But I think we can also work without jugaad. I
Yeah.
think we can start paving simple things. I think let's begin with making sure our stadiums are stadiums
Mhm.
and not places where we host weddings.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
We have the Ambedkar Stadium that exists in Delhi. It's existed for ages. It's hosted some of the most iconic games. It's hosted people like Pele, but it's in shambles.
Yeah.
So I think infrastructure is one massive thing that Indian sport needs to look at massively, because every year I've worked in football, I've worked in cricket in India, I've worked with tennis. Every year, the amount of expenditure that goes by a club or a team into fixing the stadium and
Yes.
basic facilities is an expenditure that need not be done. And it's as simple as giving the stadium out on leases to clubs that want to play.
Mhm.
Give it out to local clubs, or just give it out to people who will maintain it for you. And
Correct.
there are people out there,
Yeah.
but there's just so much red tapeism in that doesn't happen. I know at Dynamos we tried very hard to move our venue to Ambedkar Stadium because the die-hard football fans existed in Purani Delhi, which was
Yes.
next door.
Not the Nehru Stadium. Yeah.
And correct. And to fill a Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium is anyways difficult, right? And it's not really a football stadium, it's a multi-purpose stadium. There's a track. It kind of lose traction to, just sitting at the football field and
Yeah.
watching the
I think,
game.
but that's the
It
problem
doesn't give
with
you the same experience,
almost
right?
all the
So
stadiums, right, in India. That's the
correct.
problem. Yeah.
But while ISL is growing, right, this season they did it in Goa, and I was looking at all the matches, right? It was unfortunate we had COVID times, but Tilak Maidan looks stunning.
Yeah.
But then
Correct.
again, I know the insides of Tilak Maidan Stadium. It's not ready. So everything that's made there has been made in a makeshift way. It's not like
Yeah.
they've made them a permanent dressing room. The only city or the only state that I see is doing it right is Orissa.
Yeah.
The facilities they've created is beyond incredible. The first Super Cup that happened, I remember the first Super Cup that AIFF hosted. We had two matches a day. So there was this whole question about, there wasn't enough turnover time between the two matches. So there was this whole
Wonderful.
question about where will the second team sit? They'll need to set up the dressing room, they'll need to have a massage table, etc. What did the government do? They just made us another dressing room. So there are four dressing rooms there. And that's how you do it. And of what I've heard, it's being maintained.
Yeah.
It's still being maintained there. And how is it being maintained? The youth teams are going and playing there. The youth teams are staying in the hostels there. So when they do that, you maintain the facilities. And
Correct.
that's the most important thing. You don't want to get into a stadium. I worked in operations as well. The things I've seen in stadiums are absolutely horrid at sometimes. The roof is falling, the random people sleeping in rooms. And so it's basic infrastructure. I think once the infrastructure is available, something like a Siri Fort, for example,
Yeah.
right? It's public run, it's an age-old club, and it's used every single day by thousands of people. And the facilities have remained top notch. I think in north of Delhi, there's a similar place where there's a badminton court as well.
Oh,
It's an
okay.
it's a dome. I'm not quite sure what it's called, but haven't been to that part of Delhi much. But I've seen my friends who go there quite regularly. Top notch facilities again, right? But at the same time, when it comes down to nationalized stadiums, it's down to the road, right? I remember it was one of the seasons. I think it was second season of Delhi Dynamos, and Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium was given to a school for their sports day. And it clashed with a match day. And somehow the stadium authorities did not tell us that. On match day, we're trying to clear all these kids with their banners and everything 3 hours prior to going live with the game. So it was a mess, right? And it's good that the school is using it. It's good that the stadium's making money out of it. But are you utilizing that to maintain it? No.
Yeah.
The
Got it.
track was in shambles. I remember how much work went in. Right now, we were leading up to the FIFA U17 Women's World Cup. Unfortunately, it's gotten postponed. But the amount of work that people have to put in, you
Yeah.
speak to anyone from the LOC, and they'll tell you how much work they've had to put into the pitch, into the stadiums to make it top notch again. And why? We've just hosted it in 2017.
Correct.
We should have been able to maintain it. It's not been like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think infrastructure is one massive thing that India needs to look at. And we have the resources to do it. We do. We have people who love sport. And under someone like an Narendra Modi, who's been preaching sport and fitness and yoga, I think he should really give attention, pay attention. We have the world's largest cricket stadium now.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I want to see it in 5 years.
But I think, but the cricket stadium do get maintained because there's a revenue coming to them, right? So it is like.
Sid, I wouldn't agree.
Uh,
Firozshah Kotla is an old stadium, right?
yeah.
From the outside, it looks like it's really well maintained, and we know what's happening on the inside.
Yeah.
And we know every time you work in operations, the amount of work and money that's just going over putting, we just get these random walls, wooden panels or something to cover up an area, make it look pretty, and no, it shouldn't fall over us and something like that. So it's high time, I think, that we need to make sure that our infrastructure exists, because we have the players, we have the potential in the country.
Correct.
I know at Dynamos, we struggled to find a football field where our players could play. Right? They used to go all the way to Delhi University to train, all the way there, because that was the only training ground that was proper. And why? Because it's being maintained by the university, where the dressing rooms were proper. Because when we came back, because they're leasing it out, right? Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium used to not give us a center field except on match days and match day -3 or 2. Right. So the training grounds at the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium wasn't much used to us because they didn't have dressing rooms.
Correct.
So things like that. If we create the infrastructure, it will be maintained.
Hi, Juhi. Great to have you again on the platform in the same interview. And it's not like I wear the same clothes every day. I went back and saw what I was wearing for the previous interview and went back for the same. But it's great to have you. And for the listeners, for the viewers, last time when we were talking, Juhi was in Karachi. and for
Right.
PSL. So, Juhi, it's wonderful talking about all this thing. One last question that I have is, what is that you feel that a quality that a girl can have, a girl who are passionate about the sports as an industry? Yes, I think last whatever discussion that we've been having, I think every girl must have looked at the qualities that they should have looking at you. But what is that you feel that, okay, when you were a starter and
Yeah.
to where you are now, what is that really helped you?
Um, Obviously, it doesn't matter the gender, but the most important thing is to love sport. That I think to work in sport, that is the top and bottom line. But
Yeah,
the in betweens, of course, I think I have sort of touched upon this point earlier, but you have to, in any industry, because I did study law before this, right? But
yeah,
in any industry, I think while all this chatter is happening around us young women about equality and equal pay, etc., there might not be circumstances where these exist.
correct.
You will be subjected to chauvinism.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, in the country that we live in, there is like this subtle chauvinism which comes along with the traditional ways we've been raised. It's not that people are trying to purposely put us down. So
yeah,
I think one very important thing is to concentrate on yourself. Try and understand what you want.
right.
Do not get in the pressures of, हम लड़की हैं, हमें we are not getting enough opportunities, we are not
Right.
getting enough pay, we might not be able to do this work. If someone turns around and tells you, ki, what's your 5-year plan? Because been asked that question once. And I've made sure that no one does again. But what's your 5-year plan? You're married. Do you intend to have children? You need to make sure that you're not sacrificing on wanting to be a professional in sport because it is demanding.
Yeah,
I think one very important thing to understand is that hours are very demanding and extremely how do I put this? Interesting because you miss out on all festivals because we love if you have to make sure that when you think about working in sport, you look back as what you loved watching about the sport. It's always on the boxing, it's always on Diwali, all the
yeah,
major games are on these big festivals and everything. You're going to miss out.
correct.
So I think as a woman, personally being married and a certain age, I do understand that there are these questions that come around in your life where someone might want you to be home a little more or do things that are required of the lady of the house.
Yeah,
All of that is possible, honestly, as long as you know what you want and you're able to explain it. I think it's just about work ethic in general, keeping a very strong work ethic and not falling back on the reasons where people, or rather men across the world, think that women can't be a part of this industry. It could
got
be very basic things, and I'm pretty sure the girls understand.
it.
And I don't want to start on the whole feminist rant on that, but
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that we just need to make sure that we are available on the hours that we are required to. We are available to learn. I know a lot of our parents and everyone, like even till date, it's been like 6+ years that I've been doing this work. I was still asked, are you sure you're traveling to Pakistan? Is it going to be safe? You're traveling alone. I'm like, I'm not traveling alone. The crew is like some 60 odd people. So these questions will be asked. So you have to make sure that your family members or whoever you're staying with are confident of who you are. And that stands true for any industry. You need to be
Yeah,
confident in your own shoes. uh, Unfortunately, you won't have equal opportunities working in the women's side of sport, which I think would feel more comfortable for a lot of us because
yeah,
it's more natural to us. We understand our own gender's problems more.
yeah,
There are a lot of things that come into play into women's sport that are not available as facilities on ground.
yeah.
So much so as, I mean, I work in broadcast a lot, and usually in every stadium that I've been, I think it's only been 2 odd stadiums till date where I've found a women's loo
Mhm.
next to the
Yes,
broadcast facilities. I mean, there'll be women's loo across the stadium, but access points are not there, and we don't have the time to go halfway across the stadium to go to the loo. So what happens is one cubicle is shut, written women's loo. So there will be things in challenging times, and I think it's only when more of us come into the industry that we can sort of point these things out and change this. And it gets very difficult for me to talk about this because I think we have equal opportunity already.
Yeah.
The women who don't have equal opportunity are the women playing sport, not the women who are working in sport.
Interesting point. Yeah.
So that's something I've noticed across all the countries that I've worked in already. And that's about 11, 12 odd countries that I've worked in. And I've always seen enough women on the ground as compared to other places that I've been to. Like I have a lot of friends in the hospitality business or in law and other places. I see more women working in sport than I ever thought. And it's increasing by the minute. I think sport has to be very organized and women have an instinct to stay organized.
Yes.
So we anyways do really well. But where women do need an opportunity or a voice is the women who are playing the sport. As for working, it all comes down, obviously you need a decent education, but and nowadays in a scenario when we started out, that time sports management wasn't really a course in India, except a couple of diplomas here and there. But now it's a proper master's in proper colleges like Symbiosis.
Yes.
So people have the opportunity. The younger generation has an opportunity. And I wouldn't call them young. I'm not that much older than them. It's just that, it's just that people right out of college have an opportunity right now, which we didn't. Yeah. I mean, I did a couple of my colleagues from back in the day took a break and went to Australia to Deakin and other universities to do their masters. A couple of them have stayed back, a couple of them are back, have quit the industry because it's such an ever expanding industry in the Indian scenario right now. Correct. There's so many leagues, so much work coming, and with all these new kids on the block who have this whole sports management degree, because at the end of the day, now we are an organized organization.
Yes.
The sports industry is actually an industry which wasn't earlier. I remember in my earlier days, we used to call it, not, I never did, and I used to feel upset about it. People were like, acha, aap events mein kaam karte ho. Huh. You know, which I understand because initially in sport, all these people did come from the event organizers. Right. And now we are actually specialized in sport. Now no one answers that question or even ask that question. Yes. But initially they were like, Acha, are you interested in working on sunburn? I'm like, no, I work in sport. You know, so that's something that we have already formulated for all the younger guys and girls coming in. Yeah. Equal opportunity exists. There is, luckily right now, we don't even have quotas in sports industry, or we don't even have, you know, a 99% percentile to get into sports management. Yeah. So take your chances, but have your goals clear. Sports is a very, very broad industry. You could come from no education background in terms of specializations and still do really well like me. Or you could be someone who's done the FIFA Masters and still do really well. Yes. So it's an ever-growing industry, and people who are in it right now are trying to get it into it right now. I think there are certain roles that require a lot more people right now, and one of them is fan engagement for sure. Yeah. Because the minute the fans start supporting you, the minute the numbers start pouring in, the media gets interested, the money starts flowing in, the sponsors starts flowing in. So I think we need a lot more kids doing that. That's something that I would have liked to do, but I don't think I found an interesting enough opportunity ever to actually put in the groundwork. But at Dynamos, we did create a fan club and sort of got them started and everything. But apart from that, I think being into fan engagement is one opportunity that every league right now is looking for as well. Yep. Everyone's looking for someone who's going to get them fan engagement, whether it's through social media or actual presence by buying tickets. Yeah. So I think that's one very interesting field to look at, and it makes you work on ground as well as in the office, whatever you enjoy. But as women, I think always just put your foot down. That's that. All the skills come in handy. I literally have no advice to give in terms of what you need to do as a woman to be working in sport. The simple fact is love the sport and
Yes.
just work every day as you would if you were a professional footballer or a cricketer, score goals or score runs or whatever.
Yeah.
But treat your sports job as actually playing a full-fledged World Cup or running for the gold medal. So that's the only way and the only attitude to go about in sport, because it takes a lot more than the person competing in a competition behind the scenes.
Hmm.
That's us. If
Yep.
we don't exist, they don't exist. So we have to
Exactly.
give them the support, and that's that. So be a part of the team. And I think teamwork is the most important thing. So that's pretty much it.
Excellent. I think, Juhi, from Karachi to Mumbai, I think you gave a complete MBA dose. What somebody needs to look at as a career, the passion, the zeal. I think every word that you say is so much full of passion, and why this. There is no. I don't think there is a disconnect between Juhi and sports ever going to be. So that
I
is
hope
what,
not.
and we don't get to whatever we spoke. Not a single statement that came that okay, nahi, ye nahi karna hai, wo nahi karna hai. But wow, this amazing fun chat, and probably first interview for me, which happened across two different countries, and where I maintained my same clothes and you got to change it. So yeah.
Well, to be honest, for everyone watching, I did ask him that, do you want me to wear the same t-shirt? But I won't have the same background. So anyway, let's just be honest about this.
Yeah. No, it's fun, the fun chat, Julie. Thank you for being on Sports.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me.
Please do subscribe on our channel Sportsy Sales and help us spread the word about Sportsy. We go with the same handle Sportsy Sales across all the social media platforms.